Dees.
Here.
Councilmember Matson.
Present.
Councilmember Pierce.
Here.
Councilmember Canuck.
Here.
Councilmember Beckwith.
Here.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Here.
Councilmember Hastings.
Here.
Councilmember Howell.
Here.
Mayor Kramer.
I'm here. We have to start our agenda now, and we have one at the end of the meeting for public comments. So if anyone other than Lisa would like to address the council, you may do so now or at the end of the meeting. Come on, Lisa. Let's get it over.
Yeah, we know you want to.
I thought maybe I was going to get up. Good afternoon, Mayor Kramer, members of the council. I have an economic update I want to share with you. I will go as fast as possible, which I know is what Tom will like. So this is for 2018 and 19. And we start this slide with, of course, a $9 million investment into downtown Coldwater at Blossom Mills Plaza with over 50 units, and it will be housing over 100 people. So I can tell you that communities are surrounding us are very envious of this project, as housing is a big issue all over the state of Michigan. So we're looking forward to that continued development. Next, please. Our focus is not only now on manufacturing, but also on all economic development efforts. This year, we've kind of really been looking at the opportunity zones, which is in the southern part of the quadrant in Coldwater. The state is now really just trying to get information out about what that might be for developers. And so we have more to come on that. We are in the process of also continuing our land use for the future. We have a lot of infrastructure to the north. The state of Michigan continues to look for large tracts of land. So we continue to really try to do a good inventory of what we have available in case we get an RFP from a company that's looking in the area, that we can get them that information as quick as possible. Again, I mentioned housing, not only in downtown but all over. Retention and recruitment efforts both on the manufacturing and commercial retail side. We continue to make those efforts. One little bit different focus is we're continuing to look at our awareness and positive imaging for retention and recruitment of employees that come along with those companies and those companies. What our community looks like, what our downtown looks like, what sort of messaging we're putting out into the public, which we're going to talk about social media in a couple of slides. And then, of course, the building improvement incentive side, both on manufacturing. We normally do a great job of doing our rebates for downtown now, but also out in the industrial park, the state never has to worry about Coldwater, whether or not we're going to participate. And then again, quality of life projects. This map was provided to me by Dean. It's kind of a neat visual of the taxable value on the commercial side in the city of Coldwater. We feel that downtown Coldwater is pretty special, but when you start looking at the data, this is what pops out. The taxable value in the city is more than double downtown than anywhere else. So the taxable value per square foot is $5.20 in the downtown district. In the other commercial areas, it's $2.30. With that, we have 30% of the population for the city of Coldwater within a 5-minute walk to downtown, and that's about 3,300 residents. So when municipalities invest in their downtowns, their return on their investment is significant. So we did have 7 new businesses this year and 2 expansions. 6 of those 7 new businesses were in downtown Coldwater. As you all know, Northwood's Coffee Shop reopened. We have 2 Fellers Edge Lumber that's opening, the new health and yoga studio on Monroe Street, the Purple Orchid, which is going to be opening in 2021. Haas Kaywood, who did a complete renovation of the interior and exterior. The Chameleon is a little store that's done by the Coalition Against Domestic Violence. It's just down past Dally Tire. And then Short's Front Porch, which is just on the outside. It's supposed to be opening up in a couple of months, just outside the district, right next to their thoroughfare stand. And then expansions that have gone on in movement and completion of buildings is Rachel's, El Cerrito, Southern Roots, which is going to be going on to Monroe Street, the Jalisco Grocery Store, which took over the Star Block. Beginnings Care for Life is now downtown, which was located up on 27 Marshall Street. Buckman Dentistry has done a large expansion in that building. Southern Michigan Bank and Trust renovated 2 West and is bringing an additional 10 jobs to that location. Dairy Queen, of course, is in the process of being built. And then Gander Outdoor and RV took over additional commercial space. Voltec and EnviroLight had expansions to the tune of 62 new jobs, which is what we were able to use for the MDOT grant for Allen, which I believe is supposed to finish up the end of this week. And then we did have the grand opening of Schmidt's Phone with all of the investors and the owners from Europe that came in. Next, please. We really feel as though, and not that we feel, we know that the kickstarting of our economic developments over the last 13 months, that's when we hired Audrey and Tim, that rebate and loan pool program, the loan pool program is an $800,000 pool with Southern and Century at 1 below prime floating. And the rebate program, we've had 10 buildings that have been earmarked with $42,000 worth of rebates. That includes new paint schemes, architectural features, exterior lighting, signage, and tuck pointing, which is a very expensive but very critical piece to maintaining buildings in downtown. You know, the other piece that is really important to this is maintaining the buildings today is really significant for when we try and sell them and or recruit to them 5 and 10 years from now. If they haven't been well maintained, trying to get someone to come in and invest the amount of money that's required is very difficult. So what we're really liking is the public-private partnerships, which is what really makes communities run. And also our loan pool program and the rebate program, the state loves because we have to have a local participation to get any grants, and they consider this our local participation. We've had private investment in the last 13 months of over $1 million committed to downtown. One thing I did want to mention on the slide that I had forgotten back when we talked about taxable value, you don't have to go back, but I also want to bring to your attention that we have over 550 employees in downtown Coldwater currently, today, without other things that we're going to recruit. 550, that makes, from a district's perspective, the 4th largest employer in the city of Coldwater. So it's a significant economic engine. Our momentum, we feel, is really good. We've had over 60 cold calls to businesses all over the state where people have gone in from your economic development team and said, hey, have you heard about Coldwater? You know, we'd love to have you come down. We've had over 40 vacant buildings that are downtown, over 40 times that they've been shown to prospective clients, investors, and over 14 calls taken just, hey, what do you have? And trying to direct people and letting people know what's going on in downtown. Over 10 presentations have been given regarding Coldwater, and we have targeted brew pubs, restaurants, tap rooms, retail outlet, retail unique gifts, high-end cigars, smoke shops, bakery, coffee and donuts, and Mediterranean restaurants, just to name a few, as far as what we're looking at and trying to bring downtown. These pictures are of 2 of the facade programs that come along with the one before, just a couple that have been completed, along with the ones we have on the docket. I don't have Rachel's salon in there, that's the old Woodward's building, it was pretty cool. The next slide shows our social media efforts, not only on Facebook, but on Instagram, where we've reached over 5,000 people on different posts. It's been very positively received. The team has been doing a great job of even posting on Fridays of what's going on in downtown. They had a homecoming takeover, they called it, where every post they did during homecoming week was about downtown and homecoming. So for instance, stop into Integrity Apparel and pick up your spirit wear while you're on your way to Coldwater Field. Come and grab a snack and watch the kids paint the town red. So every post that year, or that week, was all around homecoming. Next. We had a bike rack competition, I guess, for the type of design, and this is the design that won. It was really great. GW Display Fixtures out of Brunson fulfilled the order, and they'll be going in the spring. Locations are El Cerrito, Monroe Street, Tibbetts, Jeannie's, the EB Center, Northwoods or Taylor's Corner, and then the library. So this is, again, another way of trying to bring people downtown, not just through cars and parking. All the progressive communities are doing a great job with getting the types of bike racks that are necessary. We do have signage that we've started on the ground that says, please walk your bikes. And they'll be trying to look at that. There are people sometimes that go into communities that don't see the signs and accidentally ride their bike in downtown Traverse City and then get dirty looks looked at it. That does happen sometimes, but hopefully it won't happen in downtown Coldwater. Did happen to maybe me in downtown Traverse City. Just saying, I didn't see this. Seasonal decorations, we continue for visual improvement. These are funded through the Downtown Development Authority. The flowers are done by Nitrates Florist every year, funded by the DDA, along with the fall decorations that we continue to get great response from both people downtown, locally, and then from out of state. Which brings me to the Tibbetts Opera House, which is a huge economic engine for downtown and the city. $1.5 million put back into the community based on the Americans for Arts economic calculator. 32,000 people annually come into this downtown. 54% of them are outside of Branch County. 23 different states. So the fact that we have this captured audience which we can draw from, we have used this in our economic development efforts to show people the types of foot traffic that they get, not only just regular business, but from the Tibbetts. For every person that comes in that's local, not including the ticket price, but above the ticket price, they spend $26 in restaurants and gasoline. And then if you're from out of town, it's $38, which includes the hotels. As you know, the Four Corners Park, from an infrastructure project, this is going to be a huge positive to downtown. I know we're looking at spring of 2020 to start construction, but we couldn't be more pleased about what this says. We have 20,000 people, 20,000 cars that come through downtown Coldwater every day. Daily or weekly? I think it's daily. And then north and south on Marshall and Division. So this being really the anchor for downtown and the hub of our community, it's going to be a great visual impact. Downtown events and recreation, they bring thousands of people to downtown and to our community. This year, we really are looking with Julie and her team to capitalize on attendance of the softball tournaments, for instance, during Strawberry Fest. It's a great cross-marketing effort to get people that are here for baseball and tennis and now the new disc golf to know what's going on in the rest of the community and bring them downtown. This week, Wednesday, I know you've been invited to follow a group to downtown Sturgis. I think that's the next slide, I'm sorry. There we go. For a walking tour, that's from noon to 2. Downtown Sturgis in 2006 did a large streetscape project. Really, they invested, it was extensive, the transformation of their downtown. They've had over 10 new retail establishments since they did that. The last time we did a significant streetscape project was in 1988. So we're looking at what types of things we can do that increase pedestrian crossing, slow traffic, and the overall experience. And if this has been significant for their community, and they're only 25 minutes away, and they have the same demographics as us, so we're going to go take a look. And that leads me to the last slide, is the Main Street presentation that you're all invited to on November 14th. The state of Michigan is going to come in. We have always patterned our Downtown Development Authority through the Main Street program, which is a 4-point approach. Back in '86, the state picked the Main Street communities, and they never picked Coldwater as a Main Street community. They have completely changed how they do that now. Now any community can apply, and you go through a series of, like the RRC, a series of application processes and meeting milestones so that you then become a Main Street community. The significance of that, besides the fact that it puts in economic vitality, design, organization, and promotion, which we've been doing for 30+ years, now if you are part of the Main Street program, you have access to grants specifically to your Main Street downtown. So this fall, they awarded Michigan Economic Development Corporation, the Main Street program, awarded over $260,000 to businesses in Main Street certified downtowns. So that's a significant, yet another tool in the toolbox for economic development in downtowns. Are there any questions?
Is there an update on the water park? Is that still on track to be done next May?
I think that it is. I haven't heard anything different through the funding source. We usually get updates on certain milestones that they have to meet. So far, I think it is. Is that correct?
I actually was at another meeting with that owner, and he said that's still moving ahead, full steam ahead, so just last week.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions for me?
Lisa? If not, thank you very much and for
Thank
all the work you do, Lisa, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other public comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll go to our consent agenda. These are items that are considered routine. We'll take them in one motion unless someone up here or someone in the audience wants it removed for further clarification. Tonight on our consent agenda, we've got our minutes of October 14, LDA Finance Authority minutes of March 23rd, BPU minutes of September 17th, South Central Power Agency minutes of September 5th and September 11th, our BPU financial reports for August of 19, police activity report for the third quarter of 19, our investment report for fiscal year June 30th of 19, and a memo from me regarding a board appointment. Anybody in the audience want anything removed for clarification? Anybody up here? If not, we'd love a motion to approve our consent agenda.
So moved.
Support. We have motion and we have support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Number 10, bills and accounts. Tonight it's $108,476. Tom is here, I believe. Yes, he is. Jeffrey. Questions? Comments? Motion?
Your Honor, I move to pay our bills.
Support. We have a motion, we have support to pay our bills. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Number 11, city manager report. Keith.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a few things to note. I'm going to leave the disc golf project to the end. So there again, we're 1 week out from the November election. For anyone that is seeking an absentee ballot or any questions, by all means, give our city clerk, Susan Heath, a call. The elections, again, will be conducted at the Branch County Fairgrounds Durst Center next Tuesday, November 5th. Allen Avenue, Lisa made reference to that reconstruction project. It's really, other than the alley behind Mills Plaza, this is our remaining construction project yet this year. The weather's now looking promising this week to get it all in, but the intent is, weather permitting, to pave next Saturday to try to schedule that in such a way that we're being the least impactful, primarily to Voltec and EnviroLight. So we continue to work with them on that project, and we know that it's such a congested area and such a small area with the sheer number of trucks that they have on a daily basis. North Hanchett Street, we got notice out last Friday. We converted North Hanchett to one-way during the course of the Milne Street project. So if you haven't been down there, I've already seen people parking. So it is, and haven't heard any of accidents or issues yet. So it seems to be working so far. And then about an additional 12 parking stalls were made available by going one way. So that's one way northbound from US 12. So you can turn from US 12 onto Hanchett just as anyone normally would. But if you're headed southbound on Hanchett, you'll have to turn onto Harrison for 1 block over and get to the light at Clay. As we discussed last month, or last meeting, at your direction, we've extended the monthly brush pickup, and we've gotten lots of social media and communication out about that, so we'll be taking that through next week. And brush for yard waste bags will be continued to be picked up on Mondays through the course of November. And lastly, leaf pickup. We had a beautiful weekend, at least the last half of it, but the wind and the rain, I think, started to finally bring down leaves, so we anticipate starting leaf pickup next week. And there'll be multiple passes through the city, so but we'll get more information out about that as that begins to occur. And then lastly, I just wanted to note that the city would like to recognize Eagle Scout candidate Carson Purrs for his efforts in raising funds. He's a junior at Coldwater High School. He's an Eagle Scout candidate, and he has been working with Community Enrichment Director Julie Santur in preparing the design and installation of a disc golf course out at Heritage Park. And so it'll be a 9-hole golf course, and he raised the money in which to do that, raised the, with the assistance of DMS, some of the labor, and we will next spring have a disc golf course. We hope to have a ribbon cutting, if not yet this fall, then beginning the next spring. And so we'd just like to thank Carson for that great work, and I know Julie and David worked with him through the course of the summer and fall. And so it's just one more recreational amenity that we can provide the community, and just a neat, again, a neat project spearheaded by one of our local high school students. And with that, that's my comments for tonight.
Yep.
Just a question that popped up this morning. Recycle must have started at like 7 o'clock on our side. We usually don't come to our neighborhood until about 10 o'clock. Just wondering if something changed or pattern change?
Not that I had heard of. Obviously, we tell people that they have to be out the night before, but I hadn't heard of anything
Could be a new
out of the
drive.
ordinary.
Okay.
Could be a new driveway.
Drive a different route maybe or something. Thank you.
Questions for Keith? Not a motion to approve the city manager report, please.
Move to approve the city manager's report.
Support.
We have motion and we have support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have a public hearing regarding the application for an obsolete property rehab act tax exemption certificate for 41 to 47 West Chicago. Open the public hearing and hear from Deb and anyone else who wishes to comment. Deb?
Good evening. At our last meeting, you set a public hearing and we received an application for an obsolete property rehabilitation act application. The project is located at 4147 West Chicago Street, and they intend on rehabilitating all 3 floors into a retail/entertainment type venue. Since then, the Oprah Review Committee, according to policy, has met, and they've recommended that we approve that for 12 years based on the fact that there's an estimated investment of $687,000, which exceeds the minimum requirement of $50,000. A minimum of 6 to 8 full-time positions are going to be created, along with approximately 10 construction jobs in that time period. The financing was demonstrated within the application. The project will provide for the rehabilitation of property that meets the definition of obsolete, and by obsolete, I mean that it's functionally obsolete to the point that it needs some sort of help. The proposed rehabilitation will make a significant impact on the surrounding area, and when the project is completed, it will expect to increase the commercial activity. So with those things, you've received my report, a copy of the application, a copy of the proposed rehabilitation, and a resolution that needs to be acted upon. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions for Deb? Opportunity to ask her question, and if anybody in the public wishes to comment on this before we close the public hearing, we'll do that. But right now, Deb, anything else to add? Obviously, this would be a huge win for the downtown. And what we're doing is freezing the taxes at today's level, and then improvements would be 50% exempt.
It's actually a little more than that. There's a really messy calculation that goes along with it. And it actually takes out the land value, actually freezes the current existing improvements at the taxable values that it's currently at, and then it takes the value of the improvements and actually exempts it from everything except the state education tax and the school operating tax, and then the state can act on those as well. So it's a significant impact when we're all done with it.
Any questions for Deb?
What was the time frame again for the project?
David,
2 years.
2 years total.
That's what we're hoping for.
Nice.
Is there anybody else in the public would like to comment on this? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring the discussion up to council level. Later discussion, if we were so inclined, they're looking for us to adopt Resolution 1979.
Move to adopt resolution 1979.
Support.
Any final comments or questions? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Deb. Number 13, a letter from Keith regarding our annual opt-out of Public Act 152. Summarize this once again, Keith, for us.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state has Public Act 152 that was established in 2011. We're subject to one of 3 different ways in which public entities can calculate what their total employer match would be for benefits to their employees. We abide by the hard cap, but to make sure that we do not violate that law during the course of a 12-month period, we've consistently asked you to opt out of that, because municipalities can opt out entirely and do their own thing. What we've stated is that we abide by the hard cap, but in the event that there were any discrepancies with changes in employment, the number of employees, changes in those employee coverages, that this allows us the flexibility to get through the year without violating state law. So we abide by the hard cap, 80-20. That hard cap is now increased. The state increased that this year 2%, which gives us additional room in which to work. But also our health insurance premiums this year are going to be decreasing by 6%. So what that means for our employees is a larger contribution to their health insurance savings accounts. So with that, we just ask the council to act on that resolution. It's 1974. The Board of Public Utilities acted on their behalf at last Tuesday's board meeting similarly, and so we're bringing it forward to you to get your approval.
So Keith, you referenced the health savings account, which means we as a city will be contributing more into the employees if they have the HSA.
Correct.
Is that just for people that have high deductible, or is that?
No, there's a sliding scale based on whether or not they're single, 2-person, or family, and whether we offer 5 different insurance choices, and so it depends, and ultimately it will depend on what those employees pick, and then how those numbers will end up, but it's based on the level in which they choose, and their personal experiences as to what coverage that they see.
Tom was here, right?
Yep. You can fix anything they say, so.
No, I was just going to ask, if I heard correctly, didn't the federal government raise the cap of the total HSA to like $7,500 per year? And that's a mixture of employee plus employer contributions, right?
Yes, and I'm just going to go out, we'll talk about, and you're speaking of the married, or 2-person or married, you can put it up to $7,100 a year. And so, using the example of the highest deductible plan that we have, which has a deductible of $6,350, so we'll use me as an example, I'm choosing that plan. So, on my behalf, the city will put in $3,850, that's an estimated number, into a plan for me, into this plan. I can then put in up to $7,100. So that would leave me $3,200 that I can put in. And then that, of course, rolls over from year to year. That's kind of the magic, the beauty of this plan versus the older FSA plans, where it's kind of a use it or lose it.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing is we're contributing a little bit more. It kind of helps the employee not have to contribute as much.
Correct.
And it depends on what policy they choose, and it's more than last year because of our experience rating. So with our insurance premiums decreasing, we're able to still fall under the hard cap, but increase the contribution.
Good. Okay, I think that's a good thing.
Good question? If not, they're looking for us to adopt resolution 1974.
Move to adopt, Your Honor.
Support. Any questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Number 14, a letter from Jeff Budd, Utility Director, regarding the electric system revenue bond.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor, City Council. So what's in front of you is a notice of intent. The notice of intent says that we are intending to issue bonds, and the intent of the notice is that we will be taking the bonds that are currently outstanding on the MSCPA books and bringing those back under our books. So in essence, this is taking the debt, which we're already 100% responsible for, since on Project 4, which is the natural 13 megawatt natural gas plant that's on Butters Avenue. When we originally built that plant, it was done with at the agency level, so they incurred the debt. So basically, all it's doing is taking the debt, which we had to pay for, taking it off the agency's books and putting it on the BPU's books. This doesn't obligate us at this point. All this does is say that, hey, we're intending to, so if somebody wanted to petition, they have a 45-day right of referendum to come in and petition this. Again, we pay for 100% of this debt anyway because we're the only participant in the project. At this time, you know, in a very, very unlikely event that the city of Coldwater goes bankrupt, it actually has some benefits in that it takes it off the agency's books, because if we were to go bankrupt, the other members would be responsible for our debt. Again, it will never happen. But this just kind of cleans up the accounting and something that the other members, Hillsdale and Marshall, et cetera, would like us to kind of consider. So it is not a done deal, but this is at least that we want to start doing the financing, because we're getting ready to do financing, which is already approved for the electrical substation. This just sets the wheels in motion so that when we get ready to do those bonds, we can do them collectively and together. And in the aggregate, hopefully save on some of the financing costs. So again, there's still some hurdles that need to be done. This does have to actually be a sale between the agency and the BPU. Again, so that isn't really a done deal, but I think it's probably the best way to go. There are some other options we are looking at. But tonight, all we're looking for is just the intent to get the ball rolling, but then answer any questions you have.
Questions for Joe?
Can you explain why taking this debt will give us a positive bond rating? How does it help that?
Yeah, thank you. I meant to include that. So one of the benefits of doing this is currently our bond rating. When we went to the rating agencies for the Clemens infrastructure, et cetera, one of the things that they said is they didn't like us having off-balance sheet debt. So even though this is our debt, it's not on our balance sheet. So this would clear up some of the confusion about, well, are we rating the agency or are we rating the BPU/city? So all city debt is, or all debt of the agency is always done in the name of the city. So this will actually hopefully take about 3 or 4 different comments that they had about what they didn't like about having that debt not on our balance sheet. So even though we disclose it and it's on our financial statements, it's not on our balance sheet. So there's also some other benefits. Again, I'll get a little bit of minutia. So for instance, right now, it's bank debt. The agency, when they financed it for a very short period of time. We will be putting this back over an estimated useful life of the engines. So we'll take, just like your mortgage, well, if you want to do a 30-year mortgage or a 15-year mortgage, your payment usually is higher for your 15-year mortgage. Well, we're going to adjust the payment so it's more in line with what we have. We would probably reduce our actual debt service we have on an annual basis. The actual debt, as you know, whenever we do these types of financings, we also always ask for way more than we're going to borrow for. I think ultimately, if this does get approved and gets passed by all the various entities, I think the debt by that time will be $11 million and change. So again, we always ask for way more because that covers all the financing costs, et cetera. So, okay, so you're spending 13, no, it would be something less than that, but the intent is always a much higher number. So thank you for reminding me, perhaps. Thank you.
Question for Joe?
It was a similar question.
Okay. Yep, thanks.
No more questions. Are asking us to adopt resolution 1977.
Motion to adopt 1977.
Support.
We have a motion, we have support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Just while you're up there, you're going to handle that full memo regarding discontinuation of email and web hosting by BPU.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple things first I want to start off. One, I want to make it very clear. The article was very well done. Don wrote the article, but the headline made it sound like we were getting rid of our web services. Want to emphatically state we are not getting out of the internet business, quite the opposite. So I was missing one word, which is web hosting. So currently right now we have roughly 22 members or participants and residents that might use this for web hosting. This was something that we did a lot back in 1997 when we first started. Again, so much has changed since then. We no longer have that area of expertise. It's nothing that we have, and we have to start making a lot of capital improvements and hiring people to continue the website hosting. Most of these people we do website hostings are for nonprofits. So for instance, the triathlon at Coeur Lake Marina. So they're very old and things that are just kind of static. So we're actually trying to end it for those 22 customers because we have to start at the point where we're going to have to invest in new servers and equipment. And it just didn't make sense for us to be in that business. The private sector does that piece a lot better than we do, and we are looking to assist those customers on how to move from our website hosting to some local providers that can provide that same service much better, more efficiently than we can. So that's kind of the website hosting piece of it. But again, very clear, we are not getting out of the internet business. The other one is the email address. As you also know, this is also something in 1997, most people had never heard of email. A lot of people since that time have moved to free services such as Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo Mail, and they have another account that they work, AOL. So something that we used to provide back in 1987 has kind of outlived its usefulness. We're also at that same point, a lot of the servers that we have, we're still running certain servers on NT. They're way past their end of useful life, so to start investing more money on something that, again, the private industry handles much better than we were, it just didn't make sense to continue serving this aspect of that service. So we are going to send it out to our customers. We have to send it out to all of our customers because, quite honestly, we don't know who's using it and not using it. We understand that there will be some transition period for those who are using our email services. So again, we know that that's going to change a little bit of that, and there will be a little bit of confusion. But we have our website, shows you step by step. You can also call our help desk, you can call our customer service. We will help people navigate how to migrate their information off our email services to others. So even though we'll be sending out roughly 1,800 letters, most of those will read it says if the end of your email doesn't say jeffbudd@cbpu.com, you can just throw that letter away. But if you are using jeffbudd@cbpu.com, you need to go through the steps to migrate that to a free service. And again, we list like 5 different services that you can go to. I'm a prime example. I have a BPU email account. I haven't used it in over 20 years, but we're still supporting that. And right now, there's free services, and it's going to be the point where we have to invest, and it doesn't make any sense for us to charge a customer for something that they can get a bigger mailbox and do some things in that picture. So just want to point that out. And then in addition to that, November 12th, I did send out an email at 5:30. We hope to be having a joint workshop with the BPU discuss further our services. So.
Claire? Questions?
So what happens for we've got a number of elderly people here who do use the BPU.
Yep.
Web or the email system. How are they going to be able to get their emails forwarded to, let's say they set up a Gmail?
Yep, it's on our website, so they can either follow step by steps. We've also talked about reaching out. Again, this doesn't happen. We want to give a 90-day notice. We'll also probably reach out to the senior center because I know they have their computer services. But we'll help anybody they call, and we'll make sure that we're going to probably discontinue the service, but we're not getting rid of the data until some period of time. So again, we do got to have to pick, because that's the point where we were hoping that some of these servers that, again, we had Art. We no longer have Art Plato, and he was a master of keeping things running. So again, it just doesn't make sense. But we'll be glad to help anybody, anytime. We value them as a customer. Just want to make sure that they will, we'll do all we can to make that transition. But we want to wait until after the holidays. We don't want to say, hey, we want to be done by December 30th. So, January, we'll get a lot of questions. But if anybody has questions, feel free to have them call at our help desk, and they'll be glad to walk through that.
Can we send Dave Sattler out to each home to show him how to set it up?
Dave Sattler may be the worst person I would ever send out there, but even he taught Art a few things, let me tell you. Even Dave can walk through this. It's actually quite simple. So, but it is a pain. It's like changing your phone number back in the 1980s. You got to call and say, hey, I got a new phone number. And I do apologize for those people who are using it, but it wasn't fair to those to keep subsidizing it and making people pay for something that can be done free.
More questions for Jeff? If not, he's looking for an adoption of Resolution 1976.
Support.
Got a motion, I have support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Number 16, a letter from Keith regarding the request award of demolition bids for 26 South Monroe, 25 Munson Street, 55 East Park, and 35 Lucky Drive. Keith?
Thank you, Your Honor. This would be Resolution 1978. The latest list of properties in which we've acquired, 2 of which were through the state property tax foreclosure process, and 2 of which we purchased outright from the individual property owners. And this, we had sought bids for the demolition, received 4 bids, and the lowest being Parish Excavating. And we would seek your approval to award the bid to Parish Excavating in the amount of $33,189.99. So, any questions related to those properties or to what would be covered? We do, as we do with all properties, we test for asbestos, and that's being handled separately. And so this would be these properties, if there were any asbestos, that would be remediated prior to Parish or any one of these contractors then taking over the property for demolition.
When's the work going to be done? Will it be this fall, or next spring, or a combination of both?
It would begin immediately. One in particular, because we know that it's new enough. The Lucky Drive property doesn't have asbestos, and so they can begin as quickly as they can mobilize for that. But through the course, it gives excavators a winter project. So some of them. So we anticipate to get this fall and winter.
What's the continuation plan for 26 South Monroe, and at this time, is it going to be a rubble pile, or are we going to have it accessible? Is there any paving or improvements after it's down?
So my intent would be to, much like what the back end of it currently looks like, it's stone landscape with a sidewalk through it. So once the building is removed and leveled, then we can do something, probably not till the spring, but we can get that finished similarly to what's in the back. There is a site, when Tibbetts was reconstructed, Tibbetts Plaza, because that building is only half as deep as the rest of the block, we extended sidewalk and some stone landscaping to their back door, so we can do that just to make it look nice until we come up with a formal. We've talked informally about restrooms or what to do with that property, but there's no formal approved plan going forward other than right now removing it.
But just in the meantime, until we decide what we want to do with it,
we'll provide for, it can be used for, yes. Yeah. But that in and of itself probably won't be able to get done until next spring.
What happens if John Q. Public is interested in one of these empty lots? Are they for sale?
I would suggest that, yes, Munson Park would be. The other 2, the Lucky, we're looking at just, well, one is in the floodplain, so part of the reason we're acquiring it is so that that property in particular has been flooded at least 3 times in the 8 years I've returned. So we're going to retain that as part of the pilot Knob Park. And then South Monroe, obviously, we're keeping for ourselves, but the other 2 would be available to adjacent property owners or anyone that might be interested. They're both relatively small, but.
Other questions? If not, Keith is looking for adoption of Resolution 1978.
So moved. Support.
We have motion, we have support. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Number 17 is a letter from Megan regarding electric transmission line easement agreements. This ought to be good. Megan?
Okay, we have been asked by Michigan Electric Transmission Company to grant them easements in 4 small parcels that are owned by the city. The 4 parcels are, well, one of them is quite large. It's along the east side of Michigan Avenue, and I apologize, I don't have a beautiful map like Keith just had, because I don't know how to use that software. But
Need some help.
wave my hands for a minute. So along the east side of Michigan Avenue, from the Michigan Avenue substation down below, further south in Concept Drive, so that's in the Asama area. So that's a long strip to give them the wingspan or protected area that they seek for the transmission line. Then on Park Avenue, just north of the water treatment plant, there's a 13-foot deep strip that they want to have protected for them. Again, to give them safety and reliability in the transmission line. Then there's a little parcel at the south end of Allen Avenue, which is being repaved right now. This is a little, very small parcel. It is 165 by 50 feet, more or less. Butts up against the railroad right-of-way at the south end. And this was once a transmission station for consumers, and the city bought it at a tax sale many years ago. And they want to extend their easement rights for the transmission line up into, we just happen to own it, but to include that parcel. And then there's a little piece across from the new Butters substation on the west side of Butters, very little piece, I think it's about 81 feet north and south, just below the Little River property. And that is the fourth one that they're asking us for. They're offered to pay us $83,910 for the strip on North Michigan, $5,166 for the 13-foot deep strip along Park Avenue, $2,385 for what they want to use of the little Allen Avenue patch, and $1,830 for the dollars for the small portion on Butters Avenue.
That's a one-time, lifetime.
One-time, lifetime deal.
Michigan Avenue, are they intending, there's like 1 million poles going up Michigan Avenue. Are they adding more lines in there?
Yeah, so if I may,
Please.
that's why I came up here. They're not adding any poles. The poles you have is what is already there. So they're not adding any poles. The transmission line is already existing. They're just wanting to acquire the easements to clear them out. So just to be clear, they're not adding any poles. There's no new lines coming up. They just want to make sure that you don't plant a tree underneath that, in that easement, so then it starts interfering with the transmission line. These lines have been there for a long time. This is part of when we just wanted to bring our third line, which is hopefully going to be up and running, hopefully in December, from the north, which is, you see that's coming down I-69. So what that's doing is this is part of that sale and acquisition. So now ITC will own all the way from Jonesville, down Michigan Avenue, down the railroad tracks to the Garfield sub. So it completes the entire ring of the transmission line. So this is why these easements are needed. They're already there. When the BPU was in charge of the easements, we didn't have 80-foot right-of-ways. That's not our business model, but that's ITC's business model. So all this does is really protect them so that people don't start building a house underneath them or anything of that nature. But it does not preclude us from continuing distribution lines, and some of those are telecommunications. So those things will all stay. But if there's no new poles, they potentially could put some new poles in or change them out because they do, our poles are wood, they prefer the steel poles. They may be some strategic ones they may swap out, but they shouldn't be adding anymore. The other thing that they're doing as part of this is they have better relaying so that when they know if there's an outage, they call it OPGW wire. It's basically an optical ground wire, so they can tell whenever there's a fault in the service, they know exactly where it is. So for instance, if you go back to October 7th from a couple of years ago, they knew it was somewhere, but not exactly. They're putting all this fiber basically that will kind of keep track and tell them, hey, the rig's here.
This, if I may, so in the city, in this particular case, this is only representing 4 parcels, but they're also seeking similar easements from all the other property owners along that path. So the Rail Users Association, Little River Railroad, and all the individual residential property owners have also sought or been offered easements along that route.
So will this happen even if some of those property owners don't grant the easements?
This will happen. What will happen? I believe they're in a condemnation, probably the wrong word.
Condemnation, they have the power, Michigan Electric Transmission Company has the power of condemnation because obviously having a safe and reliable power grid is essential both for us at home and for any development in the city and across the Midwest. So they're going to be doing condemnation actions where with those property owners from whom they were unable to get voluntary easements.
But they've gotten almost every one of them. I think 4? I think, I've heard there's 4.
I'm only aware of 4 condemnation actions, and they are not residential. Oh, no, there are 2 who are residential, and the rest of them are commercial. And this would be an introduction. We're not passing this tonight. We're introducing it to lay on the table, conveys an interest in land.
Do the owners then retain the ownership? This is just an easement, so it's still their land.
Correct.
They just can't plant a tree underneath.
The Michigan Electric Transmission would have the power to cut, would have the right to come in and cut trees. The owners can't build structures at certain heights. I mean, there are restrictions on what they can do. And for the most part, and I'm not going to say this blanket because I'm not part of the project, but for the most part, what they're doing is making more broad the easements that we already have. So they're not, at most, they're taking 80 feet, but they aren't taking 80 feet from anybody. Because mostly the transmission lines were in the middle of easement rights already, so they're seeking an additional 40 or 50 feet on those private property owners that are just outside the railroad right-of-way, the railroad property.
And that, if you've been following the news in California, they've been talking about the wildfires starting up because they haven't been taking care of the right-of-way. This is kind of that type of scenario. Not that we're in any forested areas and any danger of any forest fires, but that is the kind of the premise of why they want that distance. And that's why, even if you drive down I-69 and see where that is, why they clear such a big swath? Well, they did it because that's what they have to clear out, and they just don't like it growing up, so if it falls down, or it just makes restoration a lot easier. Now, it doesn't mean they can't plant farmland or those type of things, or grass, but it'll be somewhat restored, but they just can't plant like trees or stuff that will grow and cause a problem, potential problem.
Any other questions for Jeffrey? Okay, we have 4 agreements here, and unfortunately, Mark is making us do a roll call vote on each one. So we would first look for an introduction of agreement A1918, Butters Avenue.
Move to introduce.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion, we have support. Would the clerk please take the roll vote on this?
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Councilmember Mackin.
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce.
Yes.
Councilmember Canuck.
Yes.
Councilmember Beckley.
Yes.
Councilmember Petzl.
Yes.
Councilmember Casey.
Yes.
Councilmember Holt.
Yes.
Mayor Kramer.
Yes. Motion carried. We would look for introduction of agreement A1919.
Motion to introduce 1919.
Support.
Motion and support. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Mackin.
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce.
Yes.
Councilmember Canuck.
Yes.
Councilmember Beckley.
Yes.
Councilmember Petzl.
Yes.
Councilmember Casey.
Yes.
Councilmember Holt.
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Mayor Kramer.
Yes. Motion carried. Next is consider introduction of agreement A1920.
I would make that motion.
Support.
Clerk, please take the vote.
Councilmember Pierce.
Yes.
Councilmember Canuck.
Yes.
Councilmember Beckley.
Yes.
Councilmember Petzl.
Yes.
Councilmember Casey.
Yes.
Councilmember Holt.
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Councilmember Mackin.
Yes.
Mayor Kramer.
Yes. Motion carried. And finally, agreement number A1921, a motion to introduce.
I make a motion.
Thank you.
Support.
We have motion, we have support. Clerk, please take the vote.
Councilmember Canuck.
Yes.
Councilmember Beckley.
Yes.
Councilmember Petzl.
Yes.
Councilmember Casey.
Yes.
Councilmember Holt.
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Councilmember Mackin.
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce.
Yes.
Mayor Kramer.
Yes, motion carried. We have a last spot on our agenda for public comments. If anyone would like to address the council? Seeing none, we have unfinished business at our level. Anybody have anything? We have new business at our level.
Just have one real
Yes,
quick. I was out last week, I think, going through the neighborhood, and a young couple I spoke with had a good question. Do we, or who would I get them in touch with regarding ideas they have for New Year's Eve celebrations? Their story was they've got a young baby, and they usually go off to Kalamazoo or somewhere, get a hotel room, celebrate New Year's Eve, but they're staying put, want to know what the city does to celebrate New Year's Eve. So I, of course, did the idea of a ball drop. Maybe not this year, but in the future, but they kind of want to get the ball rolling, no pun intended. Julie or Lisa or somebody, kind of a downtown taking on maybe a ball drop. Idea of blocking off the street, having a block party per se, or is that something I should tell them?
Maybe
Well-
Street?
What's that? It's actually up. They kind of like have a bike party, bike rally, whatever it was, that kind of generated some thoughts. And we try to keep young couples, young people in Coldwater and spend money versus going to a bigger city and celebrating. I thought that'd be a great idea, but in whose direction should I send them?
That include you being chairperson of that potential committee, is that what I hear
My
you
wife
saying?
would object, but I say yes.
Pass that on to Julie, I'm sure Keith can pass that on as an idea.
I think we do, if I may, Your Honor. So, I mean, one of the things that I just expressed to staff this morning is we typically are best at helping an organization do that type of thing. So from a logistics standpoint, I'd like to give credit to, just this past weekend, there's a group that helps organize the Halloween parade in spite of the fact that they had downpour of rain. And the Christmas parade or other events like the block party on Monroe Street this past summer, that was actually organized by a private committee, and we just helped facilitate it. So definitely, if there are groups, or if there's an organization that wants to sponsor it, if there's a committee or persons within the public that want to participate in helping organize that, we can help facilitate creating a committee or directing staff, but then we can help them pull it off. But it really helps us if we have interested individuals and parties to help pull it off.
So I can get with them and see if there's enough interest amongst their friends that we can start a committee.
Definitely, and we would help obviously with the logistics and the planning, but it helps to have somebody other than the city just be the organizer.
Any other new business? One quick announcement, we have two proposals for the Lefties building in hand, and we've shown it to two other potential businesses. So there's a lot of moving parts on this, but they're all positive. That being said, I believe it's important that council get involved in this in the beginning and have our input. Obviously, any recommendation is going to come back to the whole council, but to move forward, I'm asking that a committee be appointed of Councilman Knapp, Councilman Beckwith, and Councilman Mackin to start going through these proposals and asking questions and getting clarified, and then coming back to the full council with a recommendation. We currently have an offer on the table. It's going to be up in about another 30 days. The committee will decide whether to recommend acting on that or not. But just to give us some direction and some leadership from a council committee. So I don't know if I need a motion for that, but I guess I will take one. Establish a committee of those persons and myself to pursue this business location at the Lefties. That makes sense, everybody? So, can somebody please make a motion? Thank you, Randall. Got support?
I'll report.
We have motion and support to establish that committee. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Obviously, if any other council need to be communicate with, we have input, suggestions, ideas, questions, talk to anyone on the committee or Keith, and everybody's input's important. So, any other new business? That being said, we're adjourned.